Perfect. So I really appreciate you having me out here. My first time out at RVAsec, and really happy to be out here. So special thanks to the folks for having me out here and come and talk. So today, my talk is really going to be centric around looking ahead and kind of where we're going and where I kind of see us moving to, and things that I think we should change probably for the positive to make it a little bit better in what we're doing in security. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. Intro is already done, but I'm a big Doctor Who fan. I'm a huge nerd. That's my full-size TARDIS that I bought. And my wife, I asked for permission afterwards, and it didn't go so well, but I still have the full-size TARDIS. I had to give it back. I'm also a hugger and cuddler. That's Jason Street on the right-hand side there, where we had a special moment in Paris. And this is not Photoshopped. It is not Photoshopped. That is 100% legit. Now, it's not about me, but I happened to be on the Katie Couric show recently, and it was kind of funny because they had an actor coming up next, which was, his last name's Cumberpatch. He's like the guy that plays Sherlock. And I guess he's like a super sexy guy or something. I don't know. He looks like a good guy, I guess. But what was kind of funny about that is it said up next, one of the world's sexiest men alive, and then they removed the up next piece, and it just had me there with the picture. But I'm going to keep it because I like that. So I'm just going to say that that's legit, all right? So this talk, when I give talks about different topics or things like that, what I like to do is I like to focus on what's relevant right now and where we're heading. Because I think if we focus a little bit too much on what's actually going on, I guess, in the past, we have a lot of trouble looking ahead. So this talk's going to be looking at what hackers are doing, why they're going after certain things, and unless we really change what we're doing, we're going to be kind of going down a slippery slope that we continue to see around security. So this talk is really geared around looking ahead and trying to figure out how we can learn from our mistakes and learn from ourselves to make things better. And I have to say, I mean, we are getting better exponentially since when I first got into the security industry. I mean, everything from when I spent 2 years in Iraq doing cyber warfare stuff to when we got back and I got into the commercial side, we've gotten a lot better. I mean, I think we see security being a lot more in the news. You see it a lot more on the board of directors. I mean, I had a CIO that is one of my good buddies for a Fortune 10 company. And he was in the middle of giving his presentation, and the board of directors stopped him and said, hey, what are we doing around Heartbleed, or what are we doing around security? I mean, that's great. We're getting a lot more visibility than we ever have, so we have to capitalize on that and use it in the right way. So if you look at the past and present, I mean, we're seeing large data breaches still, and that's nothing new. I mean, if you look at a lot of the different statistics out there, we continue to see a lot of large breaches. And each of them appear to be from something that we missed that was probably pretty stupid, right? I mean, whether it's SQL injection or a third-party vendor or something that we missed, it's unfortunate because it only takes one small thing for us to basically cripple our entire organization. And that's a pretty bad stance. I mean, if we are just waiting for one flaw to be exploited and then all of a sudden now it takes care of our entire environment, that's an issue. And so we're in this kind of reactive stance right now where we're really trying to build up our defenses. But the problem is, like right now, I think we have the buy-off to do security right. And we have the money to go and do security right. At least some of us are getting to that point. But the problem is we've neglected security for so long in our environments because we've been preaching security for like years, right? We're like, hey, we need this, we need this, we need more people. And they're like, nah, I can't do it, nah, I can't do it, nah, I can't do it. And all of a sudden we have it, and we're like, oh, now we need to get this and buy this and put this in here. And we're forgetting about all the stuff that we've been neglecting for the past 10 years. And so now we're in a point now where we're trying to catch up. And the reason that we have this issue is the ability to detect right now a skilled attacker is really difficult. I mean, look at anybody that's going to go in and target a web application. I mean, maybe we have a WAF in place, but bypassing WAFs are trivial. Or getting around next generation firewalls, or whatever you're trying to do. I mean, let me ask a question. Does anybody here know every IT project that's going on in your environment right now? No, right? Do you know every business application, all your assets, normal data versus non-normal data? Do you have all of that like mapped and you're actually looking at? No, right? So how are we supposed to see, hey, this is legit and this is not legit? Well, because our APT prevention tool said it was probably malicious. I mean, that's not going to work right now. We're not at a point yet where that's going to work. So it's a really difficult time. And just to give an example, and I'm going to show you a quick interview. It's like a 2-minute thing that I did on the Katie Couric show because it's resonant to me at least. Going after a company has never been more easier for us as attackers. I mean, getting after an organization and saying, listen, I'm going to target an employee, or I'm going to go after a web application, or I'm going to do something has never been easier. The amount of information that we put online is insane. Like LinkedIn, for example. I love LinkedIn. Everybody loves bragging about themselves on LinkedIn. Like, hey, we just did a new ArcSight implementation, and our monitoring detection program is really coming up to speed. Thank you. All right? Hey, we just implemented Symantec, or hey, we have FireEye. Oh, and your partners are great too. They're like, hey, I'm an account executive for this company and this company and this company. Thank you. Here's when you're account executive. This is when you last updated. Now I know how mature your FireEye implementation is, or your Palo Altos, whatever you have that you're implementing. I know how mature you are in that environment now. So thank you for putting all that information on there. And what's nice about companies is it's not like it's targeting one individual. When you're targeting one person, it's very difficult. Because you literally have to make something that's believable, and if you don't, then they're going to be like, oh, hey, something happened here, and I probably need to be a little bit more suspicious or a little bit more cautious of what's happening. Whereas in a company, I have 1,000 people or 10,000 people I can go after. And you have 10,000 assets and everything else out there that I can go after. So that one flaw makes it much easier for me. So in this case, in the Katie Couric show, they asked me to basically hack into somebody in the audience. We got permission and everything, but I think the reaction is really good. And this should just show you how easy it really is. Interesting enough about this wasn't staged in any way, shape, or form. I got consent prior to actually going and doing it, obviously. But her reaction is priceless. And what you should kind of take away from this, I guess, is that how easy it is just to target one individual, how easy it is to really target an actual corporation.
She has 2 teenage daughters. She lives in Connecticut. And Stephanie, I understand that you believe your computer is unhackable. Why?
Well, it's something that's really on my mind. I'm very concerned about it. I feel like all of my antivirus software is up to date. I've taken a lot of precautions.
I know, that's pretty funny too.
A computer consultant who comes into my home to check on these things. And so I really feel strongly that we have done everything that possible to try and protect myself and my daughters. I mean, it's something that's really worrisome for me.
Well, that's very impressive because you seem like you're extremely ahead of the curve. So we decided to put David to the test to see if your comfort level with your security is actually warranted. Tell us what happened. How did you do when we gave you the challenge of hacking it?
Oh, that's a look of like, I just messed you up really bad. And I can't wait to tell you about it.
Stephanie's computer.
So, Stephanie, I would say, was actually one of the top 5% of what I would say is being most secure. Everything up to date, really locked down, all of those good things. And so I literally had opened my computer up, and less than 10 minutes or so had a fully designed.
Let's go. Yeah, I think I actually got actual sound here. Let me try this out real quick. It's not rattling. Nada. Good? Can you pipe it through? All right, let's go back to the original sound.
And I sent an email out, and as soon as I sent the email out, it looks very believable in every way. She clicked the link, and then from there, again, less than 10 minutes of setup time and hacking and all that stuff. I had full access to her computer, her webcam, got around all of her antivirus, everything completely.
You are kidding me.
Wow. So tell us
Oh my gosh.
that you were able to.
By the way, it gets so much worse. This is when I start feeling like a really bad person. Like I was all excited, like I'm gonna tell her, and then her reaction gets worse and worse and worse. I'm like, ooh, I'm so evil. It's like
Well, the first thing we did is we enabled her.
Oh my God, that's my.
We enabled her webcam, and we were actually able to monitor everything that was going on in her house. Everything from her daughter working on her computer to Stephanie actually walking through the house itself. We actually enabled the audio as well, so we could actually hear everything that was going on at the same time, so we can listen to conversations.
Like I said, I feel pretty bad about that. I'm not gonna lie. Not really. I mean, it was actually pretty cool. But at the same time, hey, whatever. But it's a prime example of how easy it is to get into somebody's computer. I mean, it took me 10 minutes to open my laptop up, go to, figure out what her name was, and then from there pull her social security number, then pull all of her data for her bank information, and then from there, send her a targeted attack, what she was doing in 10 minutes, and then it was ready to go and all set. So that was an easy one. But targeting a corporation is just as easy. And the reason for me personally is I think we really have, right now, an over-reliance on technology. And I'm not saying technology is bad in any way, shape, or form, but it has to already have an established program in place in order for you to use technology. So let me ask a question. For next generation firewalls, for example. So you have, you've had, let's just say, an ASA in place for like the past 10 years. And all of your people that you have there, your network engineers and everybody else, are really so familiar with these ASAs because they've used them for the past 10 years. Then you completely rip that out and you put a whole new appliance in place. What do they have to do now? You have to relearn everything now. And now what else are they doing? Are they rebuilding your entire network infrastructure, all the firewall rules and everything else? Let me ask a question. Is anybody here doing like proper network segmentation? Like, hey, HR can't talk to sales and sales can't talk to whomever, and you like have compartmentalized information, you're doing things like we've been talking since like the 1990s? No. And are you actually looking at what that data is? No. So now you put this next-gen firewall in, and it's like, hey, it's going to detect like a piece of malware over the network, which is what antivirus does anyway, so cool, right? So we have this over-reliance on technology, and I'm not saying a next-gen firewall isn't the way to go. It's just you have to have certain things in place before you put technology in place. Let me ask another question. Does anybody here have enough funding, period, for their entire security program? Everybody laughs, right? Because it's ridiculous, right? We don't know, right? Now let me ask another question. Do we have enough people to support the technology and everything else that we're doing in our environment? No, everybody laughs again, right? So we don't have enough people. We don't have enough technology. So then what we do is we go out and we buy a piece of technology, right? And we spend like 5 years building this piece of technology up. Then we're like, well, hey, the industry's telling us we have to go to big data. Big data, big data, big data. So now we scrap everything else that we've done before and we buy this whole new piece of technology. We don't have enough people anyway, so that stuff's just like blinky lights, and all of our 5 years that we've invested into all this stuff just goes out the water, and we hit it with a hammer because we don't know what it does anymore. Can't even remember the credentials to get into the box. And now we're focusing on big data because that's what we're taught to do. Stick with the same technology at least. Keep building your program out so you're doing something decent instead of going out and buying new pieces of technology. You don't need it right now. So I'll talk about that in a second, all right? And don't call me crazy. I'll actually prove it. So again, same methods of attack. I mean, my techniques as an attacker, when I was in the military and I got out, and I was breaking into corporations, whether it was a bank or medical industry or something else, my same methods of attack 10 years ago are the same methods I have for today. Like, exact same. Like, I haven't changed anything. And I have this really cool stuff folder in my pen test box that is like stuff I want to use because it's really cool, but I can't use because we all suck right now. So I'm like, hey, I want to use this stuff folder because I can do cool things, but nothing's stopping anything else I'm doing from 10 years ago anyway, so we don't have to worry about it. So it's still SQL injection, still patching, still phishing. Does anybody know the number one way that I still break into a corporation today? Number one. It's not social engineering, surprisingly. Default passwords. It's great. Your Welcome 1 or your Summer 2014s or whatever you're using, they're unbelievable. They are still way better than any exploit ever in the history of exploits. So I don't have to worry about like doing some crazy sophisticated exploit or getting around your antivirus or anything. I just log in with password 1. It's great. But you have this awesome APT prevention tool that's stopping everything else except password 1. So again, simple stuff, basics. And so you see that the focus has actually been less on security. I mean, if you look at what we're implementing, we're implementing all this crazy stuff, trying to protect against like the latest APT, right? And we have less and less focus on the fundamentals that make things actually secure. And it's hard too, don't get me wrong, it's hard. Because you're in a business, things are moving all the time, you have to implement things, you have to put things in. It's very difficult, it's not an easy task. But in this case, it seems like it's less and less on security. And I'll prove it right now. Who here feels confident that if a skilled attacker went after your organization that you would either detect it or stop it? No one, right? Not one person in this room. That's a problem. We're at a point now where that's a problem. We should be maturing at a much larger rate to be able to at least stop and detect this stuff. I'm not saying necessarily prevent it 100%, but at least be able to stop, or at least detect certain things that are happening out there. So that's a problem. So if you look at understanding hacks, really the only true representation that we can see of getting hacked ahead of time is either 1, we get breached, right? Or 2, we do a penetration test. That's going to be kind of my focus here, talking a little bit about penetration testing, because I think it's a good avenue, but we're kind of failing at pen testing at the moment too. So if you look at how we can either defend ourselves against attacks, it's either we experience a breach or we have someone that simulates a breach, right? And so if you look at security in general, let me ask a question. Just on the defense side, are there niches that we have, like different niches, like forensics or monitoring detection or antivirus or a specific piece of technology? And then we also have different niches inside there, like around audit and everything else. We have different industry niches, right? Same thing on the pen testing side, right? People focus on web apps versus mobile hacking versus zero-day development versus red teaming versus physical versus everything else. So we have all these different niches that we have, I guess, in the security industry, right? Is anybody here an expert at web apps? Anybody here an expert at pen testing? Is anybody here an expert at forensics? Does anybody here use Windows? We had a couple of those. That was good. So we have all of these different things, and then so what happens is we have these different silos that start to occur. And what I started to realize when I did pen testing, I could never figure out what happened when I went into an organization and I destroyed them in every way, shape, or form. And then next year I do the same thing. And what I started to realize is that it's not their job. You know, it's not someone on the defense's job to understand every single thing an attacker does. It's not their purpose. So if you look at today, as an attacker, as a pen tester, I guess, going in, we own a lot of stuff, right? We break into a bunch of things. And then we own some more stuff, and we blow some more stuff up. Then we report on all the stuff that we blew up, and we walk out like today's like the greatest day ever, right? We're like, woohoo, here's your report, you know, high-fiving, you know, we're doing the whole, you know, I got domain admin, and I stole all your intellectual property and credit cards. And all the guys in defense are like, what in the heck am I going to do to fix all this stuff? And that's today. After that, the defense fixes it, the technical stuff, and then we blow them up again next time. We may do some like blind or covert testing, but we still blow them up, right? So that's kind of the reaction that we're doing. Pen test, build, pen test, build, pen test, build, over and over again. So for me today, looking at that, personally, pen testing and how we're doing it right now is not working. You can't just continue to blow stuff up and then fix all that and then blow stuff again. It just doesn't work. And the reason it doesn't work is because we don't understand what each other's doing. If you look at a lot of the terms out there, you might have heard red teaming, you know, things like that, or trying to go more to the military world, but really what we're seeing today also is just vulnerability scans and validation. And so for me personally, we need to evolve. I know getting domain admin is sexy for us and breaking in and hacking into things is really cool and everything, but in order for us to defend, we have to work with the blue team, which is the people that are on the defense. We have to be able to sit there and learn from each other. I mean, I'll be honest, when I do a pen test and I'm sitting in front of someone on the blue team, like it's really kind of facetious, I guess, because I learned so much on how they defend things so I can break it even worse. But at the same time, they learn how I'm breaking in so they can defend against it. And so when we work together, it starts to work pretty well. And so you look at the red team. This is just a typical walkthrough, I guess, of a red team engagement that we typically do. And that's, by the way, that's Congresswoman Edwards. That's her yelling at me at Congress. So I throw her into all my slides just to make sure I can still remember her. She's not happy to me at that point in time. I think I really messed up one demographic of politics there, I guess. I was trying to be unbiased there, but anyways. But for the red team, you're assigned to a pen test company. They may have a lot of assets, they might not. The security team, you know, the security team usually doesn't know that a pen test is going on, right? We try to do the whole covert thing, right? So you do a covert pen test to detect our monitoring detection, our incident response, and we go in and we start to look at what assets they have. You know, attacks occur, they maybe get picked up and they maybe don't. I mean, especially what I'd like to kind of go on a tangent on really quickly is just MSSPs. So you have, let me just get this right. So we were at a point in time where we had monitoring detection inside most of the time. I'd say predominantly 80, 90%. And then what we did is we started moving that out to third parties that handle, you know, 10,000, 20,000 other customers. What happens when you do that? Does anybody know? What happens when you take something that you're really familiar with and you move it to somebody else that has no idea what your assets are? What happens? Gets lost in the noise, right? So now you might pick up like, hey, Symantec antivirus is picking up on a certain piece of a threat, which, you know, AV statistics are detecting, what, 3 to 5% of malware out there? That's great, fantastic. So you're detecting 3 to 5% of what's really out there, and then maybe you get something where, hey, someone added a domain admin to the domain admins group and you get an alert on that, or, you know, you have all these other things, but you've lost the actualization around where your assets are and how you actually protect those assets. So we might get picked up, 99% of the time we don't. And then we just take one flaw to break into the entire infrastructure. So this little tiny flaw that you had, it's whether SQL injection or a person or, you know, you left something exposed on the outside you shouldn't have, just that one flaw makes it easy for us to break in. Sound about right? Wrong? Yeah? Okay. The blue team, you're working on 10 million projects, you're overworked, you're understaffed, you only have to make one mistake for the entire organization to become a downfall. That's awesome. By the way, my job is the easiest job ever, all right? Folks on the defense side, I really feel for you. You have the hardest job ever. Dealing with patch management, irate people, I mean, like, hey, we implemented this patch and it broke our production instance. Now I got to deal with like 6 months of trying to figure out for a meeting to fix a meeting for another meeting so that it doesn't happen again, right? And then you're dealing with monitoring and everything else for the company. It's not possible to be effective. If you look at today's environment, it's not possible for the red team or for the blue team to be successful. We will always win as a red team because we only need that one little thing. You're doing 10 million other things. And again, no one here has enough staffing. I would love to have, you know, another 50 people on my team to be able to handle it. Let me ask another question from an imbalance perspective. You have IT, right? And IT, let's just say, has 200 people. How many people do you typically have dedicated to security? 2? That's a good number. That's high, right? It's like half a person. He's like the exchange admin, and he's like 2 hours a week on security, right? there's a total imbalance of what we can actually do. There's so many moving parts happening every single day in technology and inside IT, we don't have the ability to sit there and get our hands around everything. So it's not possible for you guys to win right now. And so what I'm proposing, and what a lot of other folks have talked about in the industry is more of a blended approach, where we understand each other, which is the purple team. And it's a combination of both defensive and offensive people working together to really start to understand each other. Even in groups that actually have an actually established red team, when they work with the defense folks, those people understand like, hey, this is all, I understand what you did here. I can do this to block it. Like some of the coolest, defensive capabilities of blocking like really stupid stuff. I learn from people that are on the defense all the time because they're the experts in that area. And so if you work together, it kind of starts to work again. So this is how initial pen test would look like. And I was wrong on this, by the way. I was one of the founders of the Penetration Testing Execution Standard, or P-Test. And I was wrong. I said, when you're doing P-Test, you're doing penetration testing, you have to do blind because you really need to determine whether or not you have monitoring detection or incident response. But then I realized really quickly that none of us have incident response or monitoring detection. So what's the point of doing monitoring detection and detecting attacks if you don't have that in place yet? An MSSP isn't monitoring detection. That's like straight up antivirus for like logs, all right? So we have to figure out different ways of doing things. And to me personally, you shouldn't even be doing a covert test for like 5 years. You should be focusing on understanding how an attack actually happens, going through a pen test as it's actually happening, and building yourself analytics off of that, and that's what you start to do as far as detecting attacks. And so the purpose isn't just to focus on like, hey, I saw MS-08067 and I'm going to build a rollout to detect that. By the way, we still have MS-08067 in our environments today still. Like when we break into a customer and it's like MS-080, I'm like, that is the easiest 20 grand I've ever made in my entire life. Like, thank you. Like I'm just like, I ran 2 lines and all of a sudden now I have domain name with MS-08067. So the purpose isn't to say, listen, I'm going to just run a pen test and all of a sudden now we have these rules that we're going to detect on. It's really to say, here's the life cycle of an actual attack here, okay? This is the P-Test standard, by the way. So can I build defensive capabilities around intelligence gathering? So I do intelligence gathering and I say, okay, well our PDFs have a ton of metadata in it that enumerate a lot of information about our users. Or we post way too much on LinkedIn. Could we put a policy out in place to restrict access and monitor that to make sure that there's not a lot of information out there for our LinkedIn users? Or what type of data we're actually putting on the internet? Then from there we start going to the identification phase. We start looking at a little, super simple things that we can start to get rid of. Like, let me ask you an example here. If I know what my ports and protocols are on my outside internet, let's just say I only allow 80, 443, 25, 53, and that's it. So I have 4 ports that I allow on the outside. If anybody touches me on any other port, why not just like ban them for like a few weeks, or a couple days, or a couple hours? That's simple, right? And what does that do? Does anybody know what that does? Just by banning those like small portions of people that are trying to port scan you? It literally eliminates like 80% of the noise. So now you're only focusing on 20%, a little bit more easier and manageable. Some examples, port scan, web scans, things that can be easily mapped or automatically blocked. Those are simple things I can do. And then you get to like the exploitation phase or post-exploitation. You do things that I'm going to do as an attacker all the time. You start to build that out, and now you start to be able to detect things that might actually be plausible from an attacker perspective. If I can remove the noise and focus on 5% or 10% or 15%, that's really what matters. Like at Diebold, for example, at Diebold, if you port scanned us anywhere in our, so we had, we were in over 77 countries, 30,000 employees, and so what would happen is if you port scanned us anywhere in our entire external presence and across our entire, all of our country space, it would ban you across our entire globe for about 6 days. And after that, it would automatically, unban you, and then if you banned again, it would block you for 12 days, and it would increment by 2 times each time. And what we did with that is we literally eliminated like 80% of what we had to deal with, and then from there we started moving on to web applications. And then once we had web applications down, we started automatically blocking on those. Now we only had like 5% of the noise. It got to the point to where, we were really only focusing on a small fraction of what was actually happening on the perimeter, which is going to be your highest attacked area, right? And from there moving more towards your user population, detecting things like that. So when we looked at that, it was a funny story. I was in a meeting one time, and I get this text message, and it was like the Darth Vader sound when we got attacked. I don't know, I'm a nerd. But so we get the Darth Vader sound, and I get on a look at it, and it automatically sent me a text message with who the attacker was, the geolocation of it, what they were trying to do, and kind of like the actual dump of what they're doing. So this guy was trying to hit us with SQL injection on our main website, which we weren't worried about. But when the geolocation was coming from a Panera Bread like 2 minutes down the road. So I'm like, this is awesome. Let's get in a car and go. So we had like 10 people in a car. We're all packed into like this Honda Civic I had at the time. And like we're like all sitting on top of each other. And we're like, we're gonna beat this guy up. Like I'm like, playing some heavy metal music, to get us ready to go when we get into there. So we walk out to the, we walk in against the Panera Bread, and we're like, that's the guy. What do we do? I don't know. Excuse me, sir. Sir, are you hacking our website? No? Okay, thank you. Have a good day. But we did get some surveillance feed from Panera. We actually gave it to the FBI, and they went and knocked on his door and kind of scared him a little bit. But those are cool things you get to do when you actually start to detect things, right? So just simple stuff like that. How many people here are blocking simple stuff? Just blocking simple stuff. 1, 2 hands? It's good. Got a couple people. So we're going to play a little game. I'm going to show you 2 live demonstrations. And these demonstrations, the reason I like showing them is because it really defeats pretty much all your technology they have out there. And if you don't have a program in place, then your technology is not going to make a difference when you're coming to these 2 attacks. Literally, you could have every single piece of awesome technology in the market today, and all of these are going to get around them, which is fantastic. Like application whitelisting. Still don't understand what that is to this day. Like, let me just ask a question on application whitelisting. That was the big buzz for a couple of years, right? So you put application whitelisting on all your endpoints, right? To protect your users and stuff like that, and maybe point-of-sale systems and everything. As an attacker, I'm going to attack certain applications, right? And that's how I get access to your computer, right? So I'm going to go after Java, I'm going to go after Adobe, I'm going to go after IE, or whatever that ends up being as an exploit. Now, when I exploit that user, what am I running under? That whitelisted application. Like when I'm doing pen tests, a lot of times they're like, hey, did you see our application whitelisting software? I'm like, oh, you guys had application whitelisting software? I'm like, oh, I did. I'm sorry. Yeah, it was hard to get around. I just didn't even notice. Yeah, it was good. We don't have to change our technique for that stuff. So what you're going to see here are a couple of the attacks. One of them is I'm going to defeat the hover. This is more around education awareness. You know how we tell our users, you hover over the link to make sure that it looks legit and everything, and if the URL is good, then you can click on it and everything's good, right? So we're going to defeat that. And then the second one we're going to do is we're going to do an actual attack where it goes against Java, but it's not an actual exploit. So you can have the fully latest and greatest updated Java that you want to, and it still gets around everything, and it exploits your computer, doesn't trigger any antivirus or heuristics or behavioral analysis or next generation stuff. It pretty much gets around them all, which is good, at least for us. So I'll do the hover first. So this is the social engineer toolkit, and this is the newest version. It came out, I don't know. Well, I released a new version like 2 days ago, but I released version 6 like about a month ago or so. And it has a lot of new attack vectors that make it much easier for you to get access into an organization. And the reason for this tool was really to show education awareness and how effective you are at defending against these type of things. So I'll get into the social engineer toolkit. And I'm going to go to the social engineering attacks, which is number 1. I'm going to go to the website attack vector, which is number 2. I'm going to go to the webjacking method, which is number 5. And I'm just going to go and clone a website real quick. And I'll just do something like Gmail, because it has a username and password in it, so you can see kind of the full impact. So I'm going to clone Gmail real quick, which is really accounts.google.com. And when it's done cloning, there we go. What we're going to do is I'm going to go over to my Windows 8 machine here. And this works on Windows 8, Windows 7, OS X, whatever you want. It doesn't make a difference. Chrome, Firefox. And that's a great thing. Like, we can take advantage of browser flaws without actually having to create a 0-day or an exploit, because those get burned pretty quickly. Obama's working out. 6145. What's my IP address here real quick? Okay. So what I would typically do here is I'd go after an organization. Let's just say it's TrustedSec. And my favorite ones are like benefits websites, because we usually outsource those to third parties, but it doesn't matter. Just find something that's externally exposed. And what I'll do is I'll create a website that looks very believable in every way. So it mimics your externally facing website and everything, right? And I'll tell users, I'm like, make sure you hover over this link to make sure it's a legitimate account. And so let's just say I want to do benefits.trustedsec.com. When you hover over this link, it'll say benefits.trustedsec.com. And when you hover over and you look at it, it's going to be that, okay? So I normally make a nice little website. This is just a demo. And when I hover over this link, what does it say on the bottom left? Can you see that there in the bottom left? For those that can't see it, it says https://accounts.google.com. No trickery here, right? So that's a Google-owned domain, right? So that's legit, right? So it's safe. Everybody's like, what? It's doing something weird here. So before you got on the stage today, would you think that in your browser that's safe, that's good to go, right? So what happens when you click this is you're going to see that my computer is actually going to go to accounts.google.com. I'm physically going to be there in every way, shape, or form. There's going to be packets exchanged with the server and everything. Then I'm going to do a quick switcheroo without any user interaction, and we're going to steal their username and password, right? So watch, no hands, ready? So really at accounts.google.com, see that? Quick switcheroo. Here's my username. This is my password. You can see here, we've got our username and password. So down there you can see the email and password here. So we're able to defeat the hovering, right? And that's what we teach all of our users, right? Hover, you're good to go, you're safe. It's perfectly fine, right? We as attackers know that, and we take advantage of it. Like, you can get anybody to do anything you want to. Like, my favorite are like getting like mail system. Like, they're just sending a handwritten letter. You can be like, hey, this is so-and-so from IT. I need you to plug this in, disable your antivirus, double-click this exe, and then when you get a pop-up that says it's still malicious, hit allow to make sure. And they'll be like, cool, came from someone like in the mail, it's from our company, it's got to be legit. Like, you can get people to do anything you want to. And what's great about this attack is it takes advantage of what we're taught in education awareness. So that's a pretty horrible one. I do feel a little bit bad about that, actually. So the next one is the Java applet attack. And the Java applet attack for me is perfect because Java is like literally the most attacked surface, period. Like, when someone has Java installed, we love you. It's easier. It's like, actually, if you have Java and you're using anything above Windows XP, we love you even more. Because I don't know if you know this or not, but when you went from we moved off of Windows XP because it was end of life, when you moved off to Windows XP, you gave us so many more attack vectors with like Windows Vista and Windows 7, Windows 8. It's so beautiful. Like PowerShell, oh my God. Like, we love it. Like, it's like, if you got PowerShell there, it's like the most amazing thing that has ever happened to us. Like, we can do anything we want to. Like, it's magic. It's magic for hackers. So in this case, we're going to do Java. Anybody here still using Windows XP, by the way? Much better off than, no, I'm not going to go there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clone TrustedSec.com, and again, I can clone any website I want to. I'm just going to use TrustedSec as an example. And what will happen is it'll automatically take everything for me, inject it, and it does everything in what's called AES. It's an AES encrypted bubble. So it's like everything that's done is all done via the advanced encryption standard. So it's all encrypted, polymorphic, it changes every single time. So you don't have to worry about getting picked up by anything. And what's even better about this attack here is it never touches disk. So we're not like writing anything to a file. We're not like dropping an executable. We're literally using everything how Java and Windows were designed. It's beautiful. Hang on, there's a... All right. There we go. What was it, 134? So this is the website. It looks legit in every way, shape, or form. And what you can do with the Java applet... Oh, wait. I've used that before in a pen test, and people still click run. Like, it's ridiculous. Like, you can put, like, this is malicious and it's going to compromise your computer, and they'll be like... So in this case, we can make the name anything we want to. And what's great about the publisher field, like, I love that we have these code signing certs that are supposed to be like uber secure. So you can register what's called a DBA, or doing business as. It's like $10. And then from there you can go buy a code signing cert. So like, I own like verified publisher. This publisher is secure. Like, you can do anything you want to. This is cool. You can make whatever you want to. Like, I mean, and make that your code signing cert, and it's legitimate as far as Adobe's concerned. So for a user population, would everybody click that? Even if it's like goats bah on it? You can even put in your email. Like, hey, as part of this, you're going to get this pop-up that says goats bah. Just click run. They'll be like, cool, sounds good. They're not going to say anything. You're good to go. You hit run. And what it does after that is once it executes, and this is just an SSL warning here, nothing big. What it does here is it redirects back to the legitimate TrustedSec website. So you never knew you were at the malicious website in the first place, which is great, right? And over here, we have full access to the computer. There we go. So now we have full access to that person's computer. And that was easy. And by the way, it's so again, memory resident. It hooks into your proxy settings. So if you're using something like like a web blocker like ScanSafe or Blue Code or whatever, hooks into those settings and then it proxies itself out over HTTP or an HTTPS, goes perfect. And then we have communication back and forth inside your network. So we're going to play a little game. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you multiple choice, so A, B, C, and D, okay? And you can pick multiple letters or whatever, but you have to let me know what's going to be the best way of preventing these attacks, because we're doing a red team, blue team, right? I just showed you how I can destroy your network. Now we've got to figure out how we can defend against it, okay? So the first one, which one? A, B, C, and D, all the above. That's right. That's correct, sir. But obviously, that's not necessarily 100% accurate because we can't necessarily remove Java in our environments, which is unfortunate. So let's do for real. Scenario 1, the applet. A, B, C, or D? All of the above. Very good. Yes. So there's two things that make most malware almost ineffective, and that's disabling any type of exe execution inside the temp directory, so your user profile temp directory and all user profiles. You literally eliminate those two and you eliminate like 70 to 80% of malware out there because that's where they all run from. So you do those two and that's easy. And it's not going to stop SET necessarily. Now did you know you actually have application whitelisting built into group policy right now? It's a thing called app locker or software restriction policies. So you have that built into group policy right now in your environment. And what you can do is inside of app locker there's a check mark that you can do saying disallow PowerShell for regular users. Regular users should never be using PowerShell, right? There's no reason for them to. Boom, now all of a sudden you stopped how I do my PowerShell injection technique and set. That was just a click of a button, shouldn't impact your user population. By the way, everybody's moving to PowerShell if you don't know that, so that's probably a good one to do. Like all of us in the hacking community all use PowerShell no matter what, like it's beautiful for us. Like even if you have what are called execution restriction policies, we can circumvent and bypass those no problem. It's trivial. So you don't have to worry about that as an attacker. So I recommend that as well. Remove Java or secure it. I believe Rob Fuller's going to be giving a talk a little bit later today where he's got a couple of really good techniques about how to disable and stop Java applets. So definitely give him a check if you get a chance. He's got some good techniques on securing Java and disallowing a lot of things at the proxy. So A, B, C, and D for reals. Nothing's bulletproof. I showed a couple ways of getting around software restriction policies and execution restriction policies, sorry. And also showed a couple ways of getting around PowerShell injection techniques if you're disabling it. Again, nothing's bulletproof, but it definitely makes it a lot harder for me to do it as an attacker. That's just a quick proof of concept I did in getting around App Locker. One of my favorites is I released a tool called Magic Unicorn. And what it does is it basically generates Metasploit shellcode for you. And it's based off of, if you're familiar with Matthew Graber, it's based off of his attack. What it does is it actually takes shellcode, and when you compromise a machine and you run a PowerShell command, it's literally a copy and paste of a command. I can show you real quick, actually. Here, I'll show you real quick. So let's just say I have access to a computer or I have the ability to use code execution in some way. It's going to be under Unicorn. So literally, this is an open source tool. And I'm just going to use Windows, Interpreter, reverse TCP. And my IP address is 192.168. I can't remember IP addresses for nothing. 134, 145. I'm going to do over 443. It's going to generate everything for me. And literally, it's an encoded string that you just paste into your Windows environment and you get a shell. So let me run that. Let me get the... So this is the command right here, if you can see that. I'm just going to copy and paste this over this environment here. I should have it running over here, not yet. So that's the command here. Literally, you see I'm just copying and pasting it into a command prompt, right? I paste this. I get my shell over here in a second. It's like that easy with PowerShell. It's awesome. It doesn't touch disk, which is the greatest part about it. So you're purely memory resident and everything. You don't have to worry about getting detected by anything. So that's an easy one. And most recently in the toolkit, I added the ability to do PowerShell injection through Microsoft SQL. So you can actually use Microsoft SQL as an entry point to call your PowerShell code, and then it compromises the machine through Microsoft SQL. So some easy ways of doing that too. So webjacking, that's the first one you saw, which was basically being able to defeat the hardware. This one's tough because it targets education awareness. So what would you say, A, B, C, or D? For the webjacking attack, the hover. I'm going to hover over it. For me, it's A, B, and C. And the reason for that, if you're not familiar with uncategorized sites, if you're using anything like a blue code or ScanSit, they have the ability to do what's called uncategorized. And some of them are named differently, but uncategorized sites literally will never, in most cases, won't impact your business because most sites are categorized and already been classified in every way. Most phishing sites are uncategorized. They don't spend the time to submit to them. So you make this check mark, you literally stop like 80% of your phishing attempts that you're going to have out there, which is really good. What's funny though, in order to get registered as a categorized site, like literally you can clone one of the, and I'm not going to mention which one this is, but you can clone the content filtering company's own website and then submit it for classification, and it classifies you as a content filtering company. It's awesome. So it's not hard to get around, but most attackers don't spend the time to actually categorize their site. It's like I just have a site that's like categorize me as whatever I want to, and then I submit it to it, and then it checks it, makes sure it's legit, and then you're set. Some technological controls could possibly do it, like call outs to malicious IP addresses. But personally, for me, it's education, awareness, and teaching our users to look for weird things. Some other things to look for. Education awareness, one. Two-factor authentication. I love two-factor authentication because we most of the time implement it in a very bad way. Like for example, phone factor is my favorite to go around. Like the past 7 pen tests I've been on, phone factor hasn't stopped me once. Not once. And what's great about phone factor is that we put the error back into the human again. So let me ask you an example, okay? Let's just say I get some creds, right? I harvest some credentials and I get a username and password. I go to log into the VPN or whatever, and all of a sudden it sends a text message to the user saying, or a phone call or whatever, saying, hey, are you logging in to OWA or your VPN right now? Click this link if you are, or hit number 1 if you're going to, if you want to log in. What are they going to do 99.9% of the time? I'm probably logging in somewhere, I'm sure. Just click, sure, cool. This last 7 pen tests I've been on with phone factor enabled, that's exactly what happened. Like, bloop, cool, all set. Like it's cool because like I enter my credentials and it's like, oh, you need to be validated with phone factor. I'm like, oh, let me go grab a beer real quick. Come back and I'm logged in. It's great. So you don't have to worry about that type of stuff. And that's where you have to make sure when you implement two-factor, you're taking the error out of the human. Up-to-date software, getting in with simple stuff and uncategorized sites. One of my favorite tools out there right now is what we call the Enhanced Mitigation Experience Toolkit, or EMIT. Has anybody heard of EMIT before? That's great. That's huge. If you haven't heard about it, definitely write it down. It's a free tool from Microsoft. Literally what it does is it stops the majority of 0 days out there on exploits. So even if you're running like Windows XP Service Pack 2 and you have EMIT installed, you're probably okay for a little while. Now, there's a number of bypass techniques for EMIT. Jared DeMott did some research from Bromium and basically showed how you can bypass all the mitigation techniques with EMIT and fairly easily, but no exploits right now are utilizing, and it's definitely better to have that on than not. And it's really easy to install. Let me rephrase it. It's extremely complicated to install because you have to double-click the MSI and you have to hit next like 4 times. If they had it 3 times, it would have been okay. But the 4th time is a little bit overkill. And then after that, you have EMIT installed, and you're pretty much ready to go. A couple configuration settings I'd probably change. But literally, it looks and profiles how attackers think. Like, for example, if I'm developing an exploit, I use what's called return-oriented programming, or ROP gadgets, in order for me to circumvent some of the preventive measures like data execution prevention, or ASLR, or heat protection, things like that inside memory. What this does is it profiles how I think as an attacker, and it stops them. It doesn't really have a major impact on your performance. It's really small and lightweight. So they've done a really good job. Just as an example, a couple weeks ago, there was a 0-day that was released for Internet Explorer, and the exploit actually checked for the EMIT DLL. And if the EMIT DLL was there, it just died. It wouldn't actually run the exploit code. Pretty cool. So for actually detecting attacks, this isn't a scenario that we did, but for actually detecting attacks, what's the best method for actually detecting attacks? A, B, C, or D? Like attacks in your organization. B and C, yes sir, you got it. B and C. So B and C are my 2 most preferred methods. You actually have to build a monitoring program. And if you augment that with other people like an MSSP to do 24/7, fantastic. You have to have a program in place first like, hey, here's my assets. Here's what I need to monitor on that. Here's my web applications. Here's my external presence. Here's my user population. How do I map all that out and look at data? Then from there, do some purple teaming and learn what you're actually doing. That works. Thought I'd fool you guys because I had the next generation Picard on there. I figured you'd pick A. Too smart. So for me, the blue team is often not the sexy one, right? The blue team is often like the guys that have to sit there and defend all day long, and the red team goes in and smash stuff up. But to me, the purple team is awesome. It's sexy. Because you get to work together to figure out ways of better defending, and plus you get to blow stuff up and learn how we hack, and we get to learn how you defend. It works really well. Companies that are actually doing this right now, it's significantly harder for us to break in, guaranteed. Like there was a company that took this concept from one of the talks I gave a couple years back when I talked about the purple team for the first time, just kind of blatantly, and they went and started implementing that in their environment, much harder for us to actually get into. So for me, going into an organization like Diebold, for example, can anybody imagine what you're gonna get the idea there. So when I became the chief security officer over at Diebold, what was the first thing that I did for the organization? What was the first thing I did? The first program I established. Not the purple team. Education awareness, right? That was the first thing I established. Very first thing. I didn't do vulnerability management. I didn't get a next-gen firewall. I didn't scrap our ASAs. I didn't do whatever. I focused on education awareness. And the reason for that is because once you change the culture and the people and they understand why you're doing things, you can relate to them, like, hey, here's how you protect your home Facebook account or your home wireless. People, by the way, people don't care about the company data at all. But if you can relate to them in some way, shape, or form about their home stuff, they'll actually at least care a little bit. That's what you're hoping for. For me, education awareness was perfect. But what I also did is I focused on education awareness with our IT staff, like getting them to understand security and what we're doing and working with them. It was funny. They had a running joke. So every week they'd have an IT meeting. It was like their change control board. And they would show, they started implementing threats to the organization and things like that. I was the #1 threat in the organization for 6 months running. So yep, Dave's the #1 threat again. All right, let's go to the next thing. But keeping it on their minds and fresh and things like that was huge. And what we started happening is a lot more buy-off in what we're doing for security. And so for me personally, if you're going to build this and you're going to look at what you need to do to build these type of things in your environment, of coming up with different levels of maturity. And I call them breach readiness, but you can call them whatever you want to. Level 1 is your basic level. This is like hey, I'm just starting off and this is where we're at today as an industry. Just stopping the basic stuff like port scans, automated vulnerability scans, NIC2, WIC2, stuff like that. Things that are going to be very common basic out there that are going to literally eliminate 80% of the script kiddies out there, okay? And in order to do that, you have to understand your baseline of your external assets first, what your ports and protocols are, what versions they are, stuff like that. And then from there, you start to profile web applications and baseline normal traffic. Then start focusing on things like egress filtering or outbound traffic to really start to prevent outside communications and locking those down significantly. Level 3, make it more difficult to pivot from a post-exploitation phase. Like for example, if I break into one system, I extract the local admin hashes. Are those local admin hashes typically the same on all the other systems? Yes. So it's easy for me to leapfrog to other systems or pivot to other systems. Or that user account has access into group policy and I can extract the clear text admin hash from that or whatever it ends up being. So there's a lot of methods that we use. Stop those. And again, the only way you're going to know those is how we attack as an attacker. Level 4, test the effectiveness of all of your other levels. So you've gotten to level 4, which is great. But now we have to make sure it actually works. You know how many times I go into an organization that has hey, we're going to trigger if you add a domain admin, and we've already compromised them. It's Friday, and hey, we're about to leave. So we'll add a domain admin. We add a domain admin, it's like crickets. So they should have said something. I don't know why that's not working right now. It's weird. We wait a little bit, 10 more minutes, nothing. We leave and everything. Oh yeah, we had an issue where when we upgraded from 2003 to 2008, the event IDs changed, and we didn't rewrite the rule, and the rule didn't work anymore, so we've been going 2 years without having detection on this whatsoever. Got to test that stuff. It's got to work. Level 5, this is when you start getting into hey, I can start to develop zero-day protection, start to look at assets and getting down more to isolation of zones and high security zones. Good stuff. Level 6, congratulations, covert testing time now. This is when we can start going to covert testing where hey, we're actually going to test you from an attacker perspective. And can you actually detect and prevent a lot of the attacks that we're going through? So wrapping things up, we are getting better. Security's in the news. It's on the board of directors. Not everything's bad in any way, shape, or form. We have a lot of great things going for us, and I'm really proud of where we've come as a community and all together working together to fix things. I have to say, the Heartbleed response, some people had some negatives about it, but I thought it was awesome. We came out in full force. All the vendors had patches in one day. People were responding to it instantly. What's our, what are we vulnerable on? People were running scanners and checking websites. That was cool, and that was all over the media news. We were awesome then. We got to keep doing stuff like that and capitalize on that and keep using it. I hope there's 10 more Heartbleeds this year. I'm hoping for it. It's sweet. Keep it going. And we saw, Target's CIO get nailed. He got let go for for the breach issues. Obviously, there's other things that are happening too, like Canada and some other stuff, but it's the first time we've really seen a CIO and a CEO basically nixed for a specific breach. So good stuff happening. But we have to get better. Attacks aren't going to magically stop. We're going to continue to get more and more sophisticated as we go along. So we have to at least get up to this point in time to where we can stop against the stuff that's going to happen in the future. So for me personally, build a purple team, employ hackers, good ones, I recommend building them inside if you can. Having a red team inside that understands your infrastructure and your knowledge, and then having folks that work on the same team to defend, that's awesome. Not gonna get any better than that. And until we train hard, this is a quote that I like to say a lot of times because I look at our military. Does our military know how to fight? Do they practice how to fight? Do they practice how to defend? Right? Do we do the same thing? Like when I was in the Marines, I remember I'd pretend like going on the offense and charging a hill. And I remember being on the defense and protecting my base. Like we understood certain warfare tactics. Do we do the same thing right now in the security industry? No, we don't have those simulations. I guess pen testing is as close as we get to it, but until we actually test these things and actually look at it, we're not going to be able to have good defensive mechanisms. Does anybody have any quick questions? All right, well, I really appreciate you coming out to hear me talk and everything, and hopefully you enjoyed it. Thanks very much.